It was a cold, rainy night when Officer Jake Turner patrolled the empty streets of the city. The neighborhood had been quiet, but his instincts told him something was off. As he turned a corner near an abandoned warehouse, a loud crash echoed through the night. Before he could react, a masked man lunged at him from the shadows, knocking him to the ground. Jake struggled to reach for his gun, but the attacker was too strong. Just as the criminal raised a knife to strike, a blur of fur came flying out of nowhere. A stray dog, thin, scruffy, and soaked from the rain, leaped onto the attacker, sinking its teeth into his arm. The man howled in pain, dropping the knife. Jake took the chance to push him off and quickly restrained him. Catching his breath, Jake turned to the dog. The poor animal was injured, limping from a deep gash on its side, but its tail wagged slightly as it looked up at him. Moved by the dog's bravery, Jake scooped it up and rushed it to the nearest veterinary clinic. The dog, whom Jake named Hero, made a full recovery. But the story didn't end there. As the investigation unfolded, it turned out that the man Hero had attacked was a wanted criminal responsible for a string of robberies. Thanks to Hero's intervention, the police were able to put an end to his crimes. Touched by the dog's loyalty, Jake decided to adopt Hero. From that day forward, the stray who had once wandered the streets found a loving home and a new purpose as Jake's partner. Sometimes, heroes come in the most unexpected forms. Months had passed since Hero had saved Officer Jake Turner's life, and the one stray dog had fully adjusted to his new home. No longer hungry or alone, Hero had become Jake's loyal companion, even accompanying him to the police station. The other officers adored Hero, and the chief made an exception to allow the brave dog inside the precinct. One evening, as Jake prepared for his night shift, Hero sat by the door, his tail wagging excitedly. "All right, buddy, let's go," Jake chuckled, clipping on Hero's special police dog harness. While Hero wasn't officially trained, his instincts had already proven invaluable. That night, as they patrolled the city, Hero suddenly perked up. His ears twitched, and he let out a low growl. Jake immediately took notice. Hero never growled unless something was wrong. Following Hero's lead, Jake turned onto a dimly lit alleyway. At first, everything seemed normal, but then Hero bolted forward, barking furiously. Jake sprinted after him and saw what had triggered Hero's reaction. A young girl, no older than 10, was trapped against a brick wall, surrounded by two men. "Police! Step away!" Jake shouted, drawing his gun. The men froze, but one of them reached into his pocket. Before he could pull anything out, Hero lunged, grabbing the man's wrist with just enough force to make him drop whatever he was holding, a knife. The other man turned to run, but Jake was faster, tackling him to the ground. Backup arrived within minutes, and the two criminals were taken into custody. The little girl, trembling, ran into Jake's arms. Thank you," she whispered. "And thank you, doggy." Jake ruffled Hero's fur. "Looks like you just saved another life, partner." As the officers escorted the girl home safely, word spread about Hero's second heroic act. Soon, the city hailed him as a true police dog, even without formal training. But something still lingered in Jake's mind. How had Hero known the girl was in danger before they even saw anything? It was almost as if Hero had a sixth sense for trouble. And if that was true, then maybe Hero's story was just beginning. Hero had now become an unofficial member of the police force. Though not formally trained, his instincts were sharper than any dog Jake had ever seen. After saving the little girl, Hero's reputation grew, and even the police chief started considering making him an honorary K-9 officer. One evening, as Jake and Hero were leaving the station, an old man approached them. He had a worried look on his face. "Officer, please, you have to help me," the man pleaded. "My grandson, Danny, he's missing." Jake immediately sprang into action. "How long has he been gone?" "Since this afternoon. He went out to play, but never came back." Hero, standing by Jake's side, suddenly perked up. His ears twitched, and he sniffed the air before letting out a low whimper. Then, without warning, he took off running. "Hero, wait," Jake called, but the dog was already dashing down the street. Trusting Hero's instincts, Jake and the old man followed. Hero led them through the city, past shops and houses, until they reached the entrance of a construction site. The place was dark and eerily quiet. Jake shone his flashlight around, and that's when he heard it, a faint, muffled cry. "Danny?" Jake called out. "Help! I'm stuck," a young voice answered. Hero barked and ran deeper into the site. Jake followed and found Danny trapped inside a large drainage pipe. The boy was scared but unharmed. "How did you even find me?" Danny asked as Jake pulled him out. Jake looked down at Hero, who was wagging his tail proudly. "You can thank this guy," Jake said with a smile. By the time they returned to the police station, the old man was in tears, hugging his grandson tightly. "I don't know how to thank you," he said to Jake. The next day, the police department held a small ceremony. With the entire force gathered, the police chief smiled and said, "We don't normally do this, but Hero has more than earned his place among us." And with that, Hero was given an official police badge, making him an honorary member of the force. But Hero's journey wasn't over. Because in the shadows, someone was watching. Someone who didn't like what Hero and Jake had done. And soon, Hero would face his biggest challenge yet. Hero was now a recognized member of the police force, and his reputation as the city's bravest dog continued to grow. But unknown to Jake and the others, trouble was brewing. Late one evening, as Jake finished up paperwork at the station, Hero sat by the door, his ears twitching. He seemed uneasy, glancing toward the window every few seconds. "What's wrong, buddy?" Jake asked, but Hero just let out a low growl. At that moment, Jake's phone buzzed. It was a call from dispatch. "Officer Turner, we received an anonymous tip. Someone is planning to target you. Be careful." Jake's grip on the phone tightened. Was this connected to one of his past arrests? Or was it because of Hero's growing reputation? Just then, the lights flickered, and Hero suddenly bolted toward the back exit. Jake grabbed his gun and followed. Outside, the alley was quiet, too quiet. Hero sniffed the air and growled again. That's when Jake saw them. Two men in dark clothing crept toward the police station side door, carrying something in their hands. "Weapons." "Thank Hero," Jake replied. "He's the real hero here." "Freeze," Jake shouted, aiming his gun. The men turned, startled. One of them reached into his pocket, but before he could react, Hero charged at him, knocking him to the ground. The second man tried to run, but Jake tackled him, pinning him down. Backup arrived within minutes, and the two men were arrested. After searching them, the officers found a detailed plan, blueprints of the station, schedules of the officers, and even notes about Hero. "They were after you, buddy," Jake muttered, looking at Hero. The chief examined the evidence and sighed. "Whoever sent these guys isn't done yet. Be careful, Jake, and keep Hero close." One evening, as Jake Dro. by the entrance keeping watch. Somewhere in the city, a shadowy figure sat in a dark room, looking at photos of Jake and Hero. He clenched his fists. "They think they've won," he muttered. "But this is far from over." Days passed since the attack on the police station, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. Hero was on edge too, more alert than usual, always watching, always listening. One evening, as Jake drove through the city with Hero in the passenger seat, the radio crackled with an urgent message. "All units, we have a 10-31 in progress at Central Bank. Suspects are armed. Proceed with caution." A bank robbery. And not just any bank, the city's largest. Jake pressed the accelerator. "Looks like we've got work to do, Hero." When they arrived, chaos had already unfolded. The suspects, masked and heavily armed, had barricaded themselves inside, taking hostages. SWAT was on the scene, but the situation was tense. Through a side alley, Jake spotted something unusual, a small vent, just big enough for Hero to fit through. An idea sparked. Jake knelt beside Hero and whispered, "Think you can help us, buddy?" Hero wagged his tail, ready for action. With careful instructions, Jake removed the vent cover, and Hero slipped inside. Using his sharp instincts, he moved quietly through the building, dodging the criminal's line of sight. Inside the bank, one of the robbers was keeping watch near the back door. Hero crept behind him and let out a sudden, fierce bark. Startled, the man spun around, just as Hero lunged at him, knocking his gun aside. The distraction was all the SWAT team needed. In a coordinated move, they stormed the building, quickly taking down the remaining robbers. Within minutes, the situation was under control and the hostages were safe. As the officers rounded up the criminals, Jake spotted the leader, an older man with cold eyes. And then recognition hit. It was Victor Langley, a former crime boss Jake had helped put away years ago. Langley smirked as he was led away. "You got lucky tonight, Turner," he said. "But this isn't over." Jake clenched his fists. Hero had saved the day again, but something told Jake that this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Because if Victor Langley was back, it meant trouble was only getting started. Jake sat at his desk, staring at the case files spread before him. Victor Langley, once thought to be behind bars for good, was back, and this bank robbery was just the beginning. Hero sat beside him, his ears perked up, sensing Jake's unease. The phone rang, snapping Jake out of his thoughts. It was the police chief. "Turner, we just got word. Langley made bail." Jake gritted his teeth. "That fast?" "He's got powerful friends," the chief said grimly. "And something tells me he won't stay quiet for long." As if on cue, Jake's phone buzzed again, this time an anonymous text message. "You should have stayed out of this. Now you and your mutt are on borrowed time." Jake tightened his grip on the phone. Hero, sensing the tension, let out a low growl. Before Jake could respond, the station alarm blared. A call came through the radio. Multiple explosions reported at the docks. "Officers down. Possible retaliation attack. Proceed with caution." Jake didn't hesitate. "Come on, Hero." Racing through the streets, they arrived at the docks to find smoke rising from burning warehouses. Firefighters battled the flames, and officers exchanged gunfire with masked criminals. It was chaos. Just then, Hero perked up, sniffing the air. He took off toward one of the buildings. "Hero, wait!" Jake shouted, but the dog was already gone. Trusting his partner, Jake followed. Inside the warehouse, he spotted Hero standing over a man lying unconscious, an injured officer. "He's alive," Jake muttered, checking the officer's pulse. "Good work, buddy." But before they could move, a slow clap echoed through the warehouse. Jake turned to see Victor Langley emerging from the shadows, flanked by armed men. Well, Langley sneered. "Looks like the hero cop and his mutt just walked into the lion's den." Jake reached for his gun, but before he could draw it, a gunshot rang out, striking a pipe above, causing steam to explode into the air. A distraction. Langley's men charged. Hero growled and lunged. Jake braced himself. This wasn't just a fight. This was war. The warehouse filled with thick steam, making it hard to see. Jake ducked behind a crate, gripping his gun tightly. Hero stood beside him, his body tense, ready to defend his partner. Victor Langley's voice echoed through the fog. "You've been a thorn in my side for too long, Turner." His footsteps approached. "But tonight, that ends." Jake didn't wait. He rolled out from behind the crate and fired. The shot missed Langley, but sent his men scattering. Hero took the opportunity to strike, leaping at one of the gunmen and knocking him to the ground. Chaos erupted. Bullets flew, crates shattered, and Hero darted between the shadows, taking down enemies one by one. But then, a sharp yelp. Jake's heart stopped. He spun around and saw Hero struggling on the ground. One of Langley's men had struck him with the butt of a rifle. "Hero!" Jake shouted, but before he could reach him, Langley appeared, gun raised. "Drop it, Turner." Jake hesitated, his eyes flicking between Langley and Hero, who was trying to stand but faltered. "See, that's the problem with you," Langley smirked. "You care too much." He pulled the trigger. A loud bang. But it wasn't Langley's gun that fired. It was another officer's. Langley staggered backward, clutching his shoulder. Behind him, the The police chief and a SWAT team stormed in. Langley glared at Jake, pain and fury in his eyes. "This isn't over." Jake ignored him and rushed to Hero, gently cradling him. "Hang in there, buddy. You did good." The medics arrived quickly. Hero had taken a hit, but he would recover. As Langley was dragged away in cuffs, Jake looked down at his loyal partner. "You saved me again," he whispered. "I owe you everything." Hero wagged his tail weakly, as if to say, "That's what partners do." But even as Langley was taken into custody, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't truly over. Because men like Victor Langley didn't give up that easily. Days passed since the warehouse showdown. Victor Langley was locked up again, and the city was finally breathing a little easier. But Jake knew better. Criminals like Langley always had a backup plan. Hero was recovering well, resting at home with bandages around his side. But despite his injuries, his sharp instincts hadn't dulled. Every night, he would sit by the window, staring outside, as if expecting something. And then one night it happened. A noise. A faint click near the front door. Hero's ears perked up. A low growl rumbled from his throat. Jake, sitting on the couch, noticed immediately. He reached for his gun, just a boom. The front door burst open. A masked figure rushed in, gun raised. But before he could fire, Hero lunged. The intruder barely had time to react before Hero sank his teeth into his arm, forcing the gun to drop. Jake didn't hesitate. One quick punch, and the man was down. Sirens wailed outside. More officers arrived, surrounding the house. Jake pulled off the man's mask. It wasn't Langley, but the man smirked. "You think this is over?" he whispered. "Langley's not finished with you yet." Jake's stomach tightened. This wasn't just a revenge attack. This was a warning. "It's over, Langley," the chief said. "You're done." Hero, still standing guard over the intruder, looked up at Jake. His eyes said it all, "We're not safe yet." Jake took a deep breath. If Langley wanted a war, then Jake and Hero were ready for it. Jake tightened his grip on his gun as the officers dragged the masked intruder away. The man's warning echoed in his mind. "Langley's not finished with you yet." Hero sat by Jake's side, still alert, his body tense. Even injured, he was ready for another fight. Jake knelt down, scratching behind Hero's ears. "You saved me again, buddy," he murmured. "But something tells me this isn't over." The next morning, Jake arrived at the police station, only to be met with urgent news. "Turner," the chief called him into his office. "Langley's escaped." Jake's heart pounded. "How?" The chief sighed, rubbing his temples. "During transport, his men ambushed the convoy. We lost 2 officers." Jake clenched his fists. He should have known Langley wouldn't stay locked up for long. Just then his phone buzzed. An unknown number. He hesitated before answering. A cold, familiar voice came through the line. "Miss me, Turner?" Langley chuckled. "I told you this wasn't over." Jake's grip tightened. "Where are you, Langley?" "Closer than you think," Langley said smoothly. "And this time, I'm not just coming for you. I'm coming for him." Jake's blood ran cold. He looked down at Hero, who stared back, ears perked, as if he knew. "Touch my dog, and I swear." Langley laughed. "See you soon, Turner." The call ended. Jake exhaled sharply. He knew what this meant. Langley wasn't just after revenge. He wanted to break Jake completely. And he knew the best way to do that, by going after the one partner Jake couldn't afford to lose. "Hero." Jake stood up, determination burning in his eyes. "We end this. Now." Hero let out a low, determined bark. They were ready. Jake wasted no time. He reinforced his home, alerted his team, and made sure Hero was never out of his sight. If Langley wanted a fight, he was going to get one, but on Jake's terms. Late that night, as rain poured over the city, Hero suddenly stood up from his spot near the door. His ears twitched, his nose flared. Something was wrong. Jake followed Hero's gaze to the window. A dark SUV was parked across the street. Its engine was running, but no one got out. Then the power went out. "They're here." Jake grabbed his gun just as a loud crash came from the back door. Within seconds, masked men swarmed inside, weapons drawn. Hero moved like lightning, leaping at the first intruder, knocking him down before he could even aim. The man screamed as Hero's powerful jaws clamped onto his arm. Jake fired 2 precise shots, taking down another attacker. But there were too many of them. They weren't here to kill, they were here to take Hero. Back off, Jake shouted, standing in front of his partner. One of the men smirked. Orders are to bring the dog in alive. You? Not so much. Before the man could fire, Hero lunged again, faster than anyone expected. He went straight for the leader, knocking the gun out of his hands. Jake took the opening, disarming another attacker and slamming him into the wall. The fight was brutal. Punches, gunfire, the sound of furniture breaking. But in the chaos, Jake saw something that made his blood freeze. 2 men had managed to grab Hero. They yanked him back, shoving a muzzle over his snout to stop him from biting. Hero thrashed violently, but they were dragging him toward the door. No! Jake roared, shooting at the getaway car's tires. The SUV screeched, sparks flying as the bullets hit their mark. One of the men cursed. We can't take him now, abort. They dropped Hero and ran. Jake rushed to his partner, ripping the muzzle off. Hero, you okay? Hero panted heavily but wagged his tail weakly, licking Jake's hand. Sirens wailed in the distance. Backup was almost here. But Jake knew this wasn't over. Langley had just made his move, and next time, he wouldn't fail. Jake wrapped an arm around Hero. No more waiting. We take the fight to him. Hero growled in agreement. It was time to end this. Jake knew Langley wasn't going to stop. The attack on his house was proof that Langley was desperate. But now Jake was done playing defense. It was time to take the fight to him. At sunrise, Jake sat in the police station, reviewing every lead on Langley. Hero lay beside him, still recovering but alert. The attack had shaken them both, but it hadn't broken them. Then the break came. Turner, an officer called. We found something. Jake rushed over. The officer handed him a security tape from a gas station outside the city. Jake pressed play. The footage showed a black SUV pulling up. A man stepped out, Langley. He spoke briefly with someone, then got back in and drove off. The timestamp was from 2 hours ago. Where is this? Jake asked. An old scrapyard on the outskirts of town, the officer said. Looks like he's hiding out there. Jake turned to Hero. You ready for this, partner? Hero wagged his tail, standing up. Injured or not, he was ready. Jake grabbed his gear and headed out. This time, he wasn't going alone, SWAT was coming too. Langley wanted a fight? He was about to get one. The final confrontation. The scrapyard was silent when they arrived. Too silent. Jake and Hero moved in first, scanning the area. The place was filled with rusted cars, stacked metal, and shadows deep enough to hide an army. Then, a voice echoed through the yard. Well, Turner, you actually showed up. Langley stepped out from behind a wrecked truck, flanked by his men. Jake raised his gun. It's over, Langley. Surrender. Langley smirked. Funny. I was about to tell you the same thing. At his signal, his men opened fire. Bullets ricocheted off metal as SWAT stormed in. Chaos erupted. Jake ducked behind cover, firing back, but his real focus was on Hero. Go, buddy. Find Langley. Hero bolted through the fight, weaving between wreckage and gunfire. His target was clear. Langley saw him coming and turned to run. But Hero was faster. With a powerful leap, Hero tackled Langley to the ground, pinning him down. Jake rushed over, gun aimed. Don't move, Langley. Langley froze, breathing heavily. He had lost. Within minutes, the fight was over. Langley's men were either arrested or down, and SWAT secured the area. Jake knelt beside Hero, ruffling his fur. You did it, buddy. It's over. Hero licked his face, tail wagging. This time, Langley wouldn't escape. This time, justice had won. The end of the fight, a new beginning. Back at the station, the chief grinned. Turner, that dog of yours deserves a medal. Jake smiled. He deserves everything. And so, In a special ceremony, Hero was officially named an honorary K-9 officer. The city hailed him as a true hero. But to Jake, he was more than that. The crime boss, he was family. Even though Langley was finally behind bars, Jake knew the fight against crime never truly ended. But for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to breathe. Hero had earned his rest, and so had he. A week later, the city held a ceremony to honor Hero. The mayor, the police chief, and dozens of officers gathered to celebrate the dog who had saved so many lives. Struggled, but Hero, as Jake knelt beside his partner, the chief pinned a special K-9 badge onto Hero's collar. The crowd erupted in applause. "You're officially one of us now, Hero," the chief said. "Welcome to the force." Hero barked proudly, wagging his tail. Jake grinned. "Guess that makes you my partner," Fog rolled, his teeth bared. But just as Jake thought things were settling down, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. A restricted number. Frowning, he answered. A distorted voice spoke. "Turner, you may have taken down Langley, but the real war is just beginning." The line went dead. Jake stared at his phone, his jaw tightening. Hero, sensing the shift in his partner's mood, stood at attention. "Ready." Jake exhaled, looking at the city's skyline. Their fight wasn't over. Not yet. Jake lowered his phone slowly, his pulse quickening. The voice on the other end wasn't Langley, it was someone else. Someone bigger. Hero stood beside him, ears perked, sensing the tension. The chief noticed Jake's expression. "Something wrong, Turner?" Jake hesitated, then shook his head. "Not sure yet, but I've got a bad feeling." That night, Jake sat in his apartment, staring at the message on his phone. The real war is just beginning. What did that mean? Was Langley working for someone even more dangerous? Before he could think further, Hero suddenly stood up, growling low. Jake grabbed his gun. "What is it, buddy?" A moment later, the lights flickered. Then bang! The apartment door burst open. A masked figure rushed in, gun drawn. Jake reacted instantly, firing a shot that sent the intruder diving for cover. Hero lunged, biting into the man's arm, forcing him to drop his weapon. Jake rushed forward, slamming the man against the wall. "Who sent you?" he demanded. The man only smirked. "You have no idea what you've stepped into, Turner." Jake tightened his grip. "Try me." But before he could get an answer, the man pulled something from his pocket, a small device. A flash grenade. Jake barely had time to react before the room exploded with blinding light and sound. Hero yelped, backing away. When the light faded, the intruder was gone. Jake cursed, his mind racing. This wasn't a random attack. Someone powerful was pulling the strings, and they weren't done with him yet. He knelt beside Hero, patting his fur. "You okay, buddy?" Hero shook himself off, his eyes still alert. Jake exhaled. If they wanted a war, they just got one. Jake paced his apartment, heart still racing from the attack. Someone had just sent a professional killer after him, and worse, they knew exactly where he lived. Hero sat beside him, still tense, his ears flicking at every little sound. He was just as alert as Jake, ready for whatever came next. Jake grabbed his phone and dialed the chief. "We got a problem," he said as soon as the call connected. "Yeah, no kidding," the chief replied. "Get down to the station. Now." A new enemy. Minutes later, Jake and Hero arrived at the police station. The atmosphere was tense. Officers were gathered around a whiteboard covered in photos, maps, and files. At the center of it all, a grainy surveillance image of a man in a dark suit. The chief gestured to it. "Recognize him?" Jake frowned.
"No. Who is he?"
"We don't know," the chief admitted. "But we do know he's the one who helped Langley escape, and now he's running things." Jake crossed his arms. "And he just tried to have me killed." The chief nodded. "Looks like it." An officer handed Jake a folder. "We've been digging through some underground chatter. Whoever this guy is, he's connected to an international crime syndicate. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. This isn't just about Langley anymore. This is bigger." Jake flipped through the file. Every page made his stomach turn. This wasn't some street gang. This was organized crime on a whole different level. Then one page caught his eye, an intercepted message. Turner and the dog need to be eliminated. They've interfered too much already. Jake clenched his jaw. Hero let out a low growl, as if he understood exactly what that meant. The chief sighed. We're putting you under protection, Turner. You and Hero. Jake shook his head. No way. I'm not running. If they want to come after us, let them. But we hit back first. The chief studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, Turner. You want to go on the offensive? He tapped the image of the mystery man. Find him. Stop him. Before he stops you. Jake looked down at Hero, who wagged his tail slightly, ready for action. Jake smirked. Looks like we've got work to do, buddy. Hero barked in agreement. The hunt was on. Jake didn't waste any time. If they were going to survive this, they needed to act fast. He and Hero spent the next few hours reviewing every detail the department had gathered on the mystery man. No name, no known history, just a ghost who pulled strings from the shadows. But one thing stood out. Every time Langley moved money, weapons, or people, it always led back to one place. A high-end nightclub downtown. The Eclipse. Jake tapped the photo of the club. That's where we start. The stakeout. That night, Jake parked across the street from the Eclipse, watching as luxury cars pulled up, their passengers dressed in expensive suits and designer dresses. It wasn't just a club, it was a front. Hero sat in the passenger seat, ears twitching as he observed the scene. You feeling up for this, buddy? Jake asked. Hero gave a short, confident bark. Jake smirked. That's what I thought. They got out and made their way to a back alley. Jake had changed into casual clothes, blending in as just another guy on the street. Hero walked beside him, tail low, looking like just another stray. Jake stopped near a side entrance. A bouncer stood guard, scanning the alley suspiciously. Jake glanced at Hero. Think you can distract him? Hero wagged his tail, then trotted forward, looking lost and hungry. The bouncer scowled. Get out of here, mutt. Hero whined, lowering his head, playing the part perfectly. When the bouncer bent down to shoo him away, Jake struck. A quick punch to the throat, followed by a knockout blow to the head. The bouncer crumpled unconscious. Jake grinned. Nice work, Hero. Hero licked his nose as if to say, all in a day's work. Inside the club. Slipping inside, Jake moved through the dark, pulsing corridors of the Eclipse. The place was loud, filled with people who had no idea they were partying in a crime den. Then he spotted him. The mystery man. Sitting in a private booth, sipping an expensive drink, talking quietly to two men who looked like professional killers. Jake exhaled. We found him. But before he could act, the man looked up, directly at Jake. Their eyes locked. Then, the man smirked and nodded. Jake's stomach dropped. It's a trap. Before he could react, the music cut out. The lights flickered. A voice echoed over the speakers. Welcome, Officer Turner. I was expecting you. Around the room, armed men emerged from the shadows, blocking every exit. Jake reached for his gun. They were surrounded. Jake's heart pounded as armed men closed in, their weapons trained on him. Hero stood beside him, growling low, ready to strike. The mystery man in the booth leaned forward, a smug smile on his face. You've been a real problem, Turner. You and your dog. But it ends tonight. Jake tightened his grip on his gun. Funny, I was about to say the same thing to you. The man chuckled. Oh, I like you. Too bad, I have to kill you. Then chaos. Hero growled, his body tense. Jake moved first, ducking behind a table as the first shots rang out. Patrons screamed and scattered, running for the exits. Hero sprang into action, darting between the legs of one gunman and leaping at another, sinking his teeth into the man's arm. Jake popped up, firing 2 quick shots, taking down 2 and... The mystery man sighed, shaking his head. You're making this more difficult than it needs to be. Jake's mind raced. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and boxed in. He needed a way out fast. Then he saw it. A fire alarm. He looked at Hero. Get ready to run, buddy. With a quick shot, Jake hit the fire alarm. Instantly, sprinklers activated, drenching the room. Red emergency lights flashed, and a loud siren blared. In the chaos, Jake grabbed a bottle from the bar, smashed it, and threw it at the nearest enemy. Then he grabbed Hero and sprinted toward the kitchen doors. Gunfire followed them, bullets barely missing as they crashed through the back exit. Outside, Jake and Hero kept running, disappearing into the alley before the men could catch up.
They had escaped for now.
But as Jake leaned against a wall, catching his breath, he knew this wasn't over. The mystery man wasn't just some criminal. He was someone powerful. And he wouldn't stop until Jake and Hero were dead. Jake clenched his jaw. All right, buddy. No more running. We find out who this guy is, and we take him down. Hero barked in agreement. The hunt was back on. Jake and Hero didn't waste time. They needed to identify the mystery man before he made another move. Back at the station, Jake pulled up every surveillance feed from the eclipse that night. His fingers moved quickly over the keyboard, scanning images, running facial recognition. Hero sat beside him, watching the screen as if he understood the urgency. Then, ping. A match. Jake leaned in, his jaw tightening. Gotcha. The screen displayed a name, Victor Kane. An international crime boss, wanted in multiple countries. Weapons trafficking, assassination contracts, high-level corruption. This guy wasn't just bad news. He was the news. And now, he had his sights set on Jake and Hero. The plan. Jake turned to the chief. We have to move fast. Kane's not going to sit back after what happened at the eclipse. The chief nodded. Agreed. But he's slippery. We need solid evidence to take him down. Jake smirked. Then we get him to give us the evidence. The chief frowned.
How?
Jake looked down at Hero, then back at the chief. We set a trap. The bait. Hours later, Jake stood alone in an abandoned warehouse near the docks. Hero was hidden nearby, waiting for the signal. Jake had leaked false intel, rumors that he had evidence linking Kane to Langley's operations. If Kane wanted him dead, he'd send someone to handle it. And sure enough, they came. A convoy of black SUVs pulled up. Armed men stepped out first, scanning the area. Then, Victor Kane himself emerged, adjusting his expensive suit. Jake raised his hands. Didn't expect you to show up in person, Kane. Kane smirked. I like to handle problems myself. With a snap of his fingers, his men raised their weapons.
Jake stayed calm.
Before you kill me, don't you want to know what I have? Kane chuckled. Oh, I already know. Nothing. You're bluffing. Jake smirked. Am I? Right on cue, Hero struck. Leaping from the shadows, Hero took down one of Kane's men before anyone could react. The sudden attack threw them into chaos. Jake seized the moment. He grabbed his gun and dove behind cover, taking out two gunmen in quick succession. Kane, furious, turned to flee. But Hero was faster. With a powerful leap, Hero tackled Kane to the ground, pinning him. Kane struggled, but Hero's growl was enough to keep him still. Jake walked up, gun aimed. Not so tough now, are you? Kane glared. You think this ends with me? Jake smirked.
No.
But it starts with you. Justice served. By morning, Kane was in federal custody, charged with enough crimes to put him away for life. The chief clapped Jake on the back. Nice work, Turner. Jake looked down at Hero. Couldn't have done it without my partner. Hero wagged his tail proudly. The city was safe, for now. But as Jake and Hero walked out of the station, a cold. Even with Victor Kane behind bars, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Criminal empires didn't crumble overnight, and a man like Kane wasn't the type to go down without a backup plan. As he and Hero walked through the station parking lot, Jake's phone buzzed. A restricted number. He hesitated, then answered. A distorted voice spoke. You really think it's over, Turner? Jake's grip tightened. Kane's in custody. You're finished. The voice chuckled. Kane was just a piece of the puzzle. There's always someone bigger. Then static. The call ended. Jake cursed under his breath. Whoever this was, they weren't bluffing. Hero let out a low growl, sensing the tension. Jake exhaled. Looks like we're not done yet, buddy. A new threat. Back inside the station, Jake pulled up every file related to Kane's organization. If there was someone bigger pulling the strings, he needed to find them fast. An officer rushed over. Turner, you need to see this. Jake followed him to the briefing room, where a surveillance feed played on the big screen. It was live footage from the federal transport moving Kane to a maximum security prison. Everything looked normal. Then, an explosion. The armored truck flipped, smoke and flames pouring from the wreckage. Gunmen emerged from nearby vehicles, moving with military precision. Within seconds, Kane was pulled from the wreckage and loaded into a black SUV. The screen went black. The room was silent. Then, the chief slammed his fist on the table. Damn it. Jake clenched his jaw. They planned this from the start. The chief turned to him. Find him, Turner, before he disappears for good. Jake looked down at Hero. His partner was already alert, ready to hunt. Jake smirked. Let's finish this. Jake didn't waste a second. He and Hero rushed out of the station, jumping into his car. The radio crackled with updates. Federal agents were scrambling. Roadblocks were being set up, but Kane and his rescuers had vanished like ghosts. Jake gripped the wheel. Not this time. Hero sat in the passenger seat, ears perked, sensing the urgency. Jake activated the car's police tracker, pulling up traffic cams and satellite feeds. He rewound the footage of Kane's escape, searching for anything, any clue that could tell him where they were headed. Then he spotted it. A single black SUV peeling off from the main convoy, slipping through an underpass before disappearing into the industrial district. Jake smirked. Gotcha. He hit the gas. The chase begins. Speeding through the city, Jake dodged traffic, his focus razor-sharp. Hero stood on the seat, watching the road like a co-pilot. As they neared the industrial district, Jake cut the headlights and slowed down. He didn't want to spook them. A rundown warehouse loomed ahead. The SUV was parked outside, its engine still warm. Jake parked a block away and turned to Hero. Stay close, buddy. Hero let out a quiet woof, tail low, ready for action. Inside the warehouse, Jake moved in carefully, gun drawn. Hero padded beside him, silent as a shadow. Inside, voices echoed. Jake peeked around a stack of crates. Kane stood in the center of the room, wiping blood from his lip. Across from him was another man, one Jake didn't recognize. But he looked dangerous. The new man spoke coldly. You got caught, Kane. That's a problem. Kane sneered. I handled it. The man shook his head.
No.
Someone else had to handle it. And now the police are on us. Jake's grip tightened on his gun. Who was this guy?
Kane scoffed.
Relax. Turner, and that mutt won't find us.
Bang.
A single shot. The guard crumpled paper. The warehouse erupted into chaos. Kane's men scrambled for their weapons. Jake fired, taking down 2 of them before diving for cover. Hero sprinted forward, weaving between crates, lunging at the nearest thug, knocking him flat. Kane and the mystery man bolted toward the back exit. Jake cursed. Not this time. He whistled. Hero, after Kane. Hero didn't hesitate. He tore off after the fleeing criminals, vanishing into the dark. Jake followed, reloading as he ran. This was it. No more escapes. No more games. Kane was done. Jake sprinted through the warehouse, his heart pounding. He could hear Hero ahead, his claws clicking against the concrete as he chased down Kane and the mystery man. A door slammed open. Jake burst outside just in time to see Kane scrambling into the back of a waiting SUV. The mystery man was already in the driver's seat. Hero was closing in fast. Jake raised his gun.
Bang. Bang.
The SUV's tires screeched as bullets ricocheted off the pavement. The mystery man wasn't just running. He was fighting back. Hero leaped. The SUV lurched forward at the last second, forcing Hero to twist midair and land just short of the car. He skidded, barking furiously as the vehicle sped away. Jake didn't stop. He ran to his car, throwing open the door. Come on, buddy, we're not losing them. Hero jumped in, and Jake floored the gas. The high-speed pursuit. The SUV weaved through the city streets, blowing through red lights, narrowly avoiding traffic. Jake stayed right on its tail. Kane's men leaned out the windows, firing shots. Jake ducked, swerving hard. Hero crouched low, ears flat, ready for anything. Jake gritted his teeth. I need to end this now. He spotted an upcoming construction zone. Narrow lanes, sharp turns. A perfect trap. As the SUV veered toward it, Jake cut the wheel, slamming the back of their vehicle with his bumper. The SUV wobbled. The driver overcorrected.
Crash.
The SUV flipped, skidding across the pavement before smashing into a concrete barrier. Smoke and sparks filled the air. Jake screeched to a stop. Hero was already out of the car, sprinting toward the wreckage. The final showdown. Jake approached carefully, gun raised. The driver's side door burst open. The mystery man staggered out, blood on his face, his gun shaking in his grip. Stay down, Jake warned. The man smirked. You have no idea what you're up against. Jake didn't blink. Yeah? Try me. Before the man could react, Hero lunged. Teeth sank into the gunman's arm. He screamed, dropping his weapon. Jake moved fast, knocking him unconscious with a single punch. Then he turned to the SUV. Kane was inside, groaning, trapped by the deployed airbags. Jake yanked the door open and dragged him out. Game over, Kane. Kane spat blood, sneering. You think this ends with me? Jake smirked.
No.
But you end with me. A moment later, sirens filled the air. Backup had arrived. Justice served. With Kane and his men finally in custody, Jake leaned against his car, exhaling. Hero sat beside him, tail wagging. Jake patted his head. Not bad for a stray, huh? Hero barked proudly. The chief approached, clapping Jake on the back. Hell of a job, Turner. Jake nodded. Couldn't have done it without my partner. The chief chuckled. Looks like he's more than just a stray now. Jake glanced down at Hero.
Yeah.
He's family. Hero licked his hand, content. For the first time in a long time, the city felt safe. And Jake knew, whatever came next, he and Hero would face it together.